bicycle touring friends. I hope everyone is doing well. With that said, I'd like to welcome you to a new episode of Bicycle Touring Talk. It's about my coast-to-coast tour across Canada. My name is George Schlackheg, and I usually post those on the weekend. This week's video begins at a small waterfront park in Saint-Antoine-de-Tilly, Quebec. I had stopped there the previous night after a great ride that needed to end before it got too dark. I had lucked out since there was no one objecting to me setting up camp right there on the shore of the St. Lawrence. Thursday, August the 10th, 2017 started with breakfast right at that park after taking down the tent. There was a picnic table and a bathroom that had been unlocked all night. It was now coming in handy for my morning routine. It was a chilly morning. Even with my hoodie on, I was pretty cold. That changed very quickly once I got on the road. After climbing the first couple of hills, I was sweating. I reached the town of Levi without any problems. There were all kinds of stores, so I stopped at the Maxi, which is Quebec's version of the Canadian Superstore, and I restocked all my groceries. For some reason I was craving yogurt, so I bought a whole kilo, and I ate it right there in front of the store, sitting on a bench. Added some trail mix for extra taste and calories. The weather was perfect now, but the sun was already burning my skin. I had to put sunscreen on before even getting back on the bike. Levi is across the river from Quebec City. It's a good-sized town, and as I was expecting by now, the bicycle route was not easy to follow through there. I got disoriented once, then had to backtrack, and I got confused again when I seemed to be going west instead of east. That's when I met Danielle, a local cyclist on her road bike. She was going in the same direction and didn't mind changing her route a bit to lead the way toward the route verte, the green route, that would once again follow the Highway 132. I followed her for what had to be about 40 kilometers at a pretty fast pace for my loaded road bike. We stopped at a wharf that had a restaurant and ice cream place where lots of cyclists were gathering. I talked to a couple from Ottawa who were also touring on bicycles. The way continued much the same, and a nice tailwind made for easy travel. I eventually stopped in Montmagny, hoping to recharge my phone and action camera while having a chili meal at Tim Hortons. Unfortunately, that particular Tim Hortons seemed to have only one plug-in, and there were already 8 people gathered at that table. Outside the restaurant, a clock had read 1:15 when I first stopped, but it turned out to be an hour behind. Still, I was doing pretty good that day with already 107 kilometers on my clicker. The afternoon was very pleasant following that Highway 132 again. I made another stop at a pier where someone was playing live music at a restaurant. There were sand sculptures outside, which was apparently part of a festival. I sat at one of the picnic tables for a while, enjoying sandwiches for supper. After I got back on the road, I could tell the time just by watching the sun. At one point, the bike route diverted from the highway onto a gravel trail that was in excellent shape. I was approaching the town of La Pocatière just before dark. My next stop was at a busy rest area. I had an apple and used the bathroom. Then there was also another cyclist who was taking pictures of the sunset. It turned out he was from Montreal and on his tour of the Gaspésie. I followed the trail for another kilometer before finding a spot that would accommodate my tent nicely. This was going to be it for the night. I had 173 kilometers on my odometer, and I was tired. I set up the tent while I could still see and went to sleep as soon as it got completely dark. Then it was Friday, and I hit the trail on an empty stomach. After only about 2 kilometers, there was a perfect place to have breakfast. A beautifully installed picnic shelter with view of the St. Lawrence next to a creek. I decided to make it count and made noodles with the chili-style beans I had bought the day before. To add some more energy, I threw in a whole can of spicy chicken sausage. Yeah, the cycling routes, while this one I'm on, much of it is on the highway. But this is a secondary highway that's not too busy, and the shoulder is always wide and it's marked for cycling. So that's a big step forward from, all the other provinces basically. Now I'm having breakfast here. I camped just about 2 kilometers down the road from here. And I wasn't too sure about it last night, but it was fine. It was a good hot breakfast, and I felt great. Conditions had changed overnight though. There was a brisk wind blowing from the east now that wasn't helping me at all. Then I was unsure about my route. There were 2 major options. The first one would simply follow Highway 132 into New Brunswick, while the other turned onto Route number 8 of the Route Verte in Rivière-du-Loup. I stopped at the visitor center in Kamouraska and had a close look at the maps, both online and in paper version. Route 8 appeared to follow Quebec's Expressway number 85, but it had to be separate from it as expressways were off limits for bicycles. In Rivière-du-Loup, I made a stop at Walmart to stock up on food again. I ate the bananas and half of the licorice candy I had bought right away. Then I went to Tim Hortons for coffee and a chance to recharge my electronic devices. I also happened to be right next to the turnoff for my bicycle route, so this was going to be easy. Well, easy to find it was, but I wasn't ready for the long climb uphill. It was exhausting and probably the toughest since Northern Ontario. The view from the top was very rewarding though. Route 8 started on a city bike lane, but soon turned onto a gravel trail. It was in great condition and made for a very good ride. Once again, I was impressed with the way everything was maintained. It's just paradise for cycling. Once again, thumbs up Quebec that this is fantastic. There were numerous picnic shelters. The kilometers were marked. That trail is also known as the Temisquata. It is reserved for non-motorized activities like cycling and hiking during the summer, but in the wintertime it's for snowmobiles. While pretty pleasant overall, the ride was challenging in one way. The grade was constantly climbing, if only very subtle. This trail so far it has been demanding. It's an old railway line, and you know, I don't know if there's any big mountains in Quebec, but it just seems like I gotta be at the summit of something pretty soon here. Been climbing the whole way. I had seen this kind of incline on the Kettle Valley Trail in BC, and like the KVR, this trail also used to be a rail line. I had to keep reminding myself that eventually a descent would follow, while I was moving at only about, well, maybe 15 kilometers an hour. Trying to keep up the speed here. It's hard work. I made 2 stops for short picnics and discovered a route map on a board that promised a camping facility at kilometer 94. I figure I got about an hour and a half left, to ride. I'm gonna stay somewhere at a place like this. Since the sun was beginning to set shortly after, I figured kilometer 94 would be my home for the night. I was not disappointed. There was a wooden deck to keep the tent off the ground, a barbecue with firewood provided, and of course a picnic table. Camping was supposed to be $10, but there was no attendant to collect it, and the self-check-in was not maintained. I cooked supper, chili again, and set up my tent right after finishing that. Once again, it was done just as it got dark. It was very quiet with very faint highway noise in the distance. It was going to be a very good sleep. It was also going to be the last one in Quebec. Well, more on that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed the video and click on that famous like button. If you're new here, you're probably wondering how I got to this point. Why not check out my growing playlist, Bicycle Tour Canada Coast to Coast? Hey, you might even consider subscribing. Wink wink.